Hey, Lone Top Tens here. Queen Victoria may have enjoyed the splendors of being royalty, but before taking the throne, her childhood was miserable and tragic. She lived a confined life with a difficult mother and went through some very horrible things that would shape the queen when she became. So that's why we take a look at the 10 horrifying facts from the life of Queen Victoria. I just want to say, some of this will be a little bit shocking to some people, so, quote-unquote, spoiler alert, will be about to come. Number 10. Her father had died before she even turned 1. Victoria never knew her father. He died before she turned 1. Before she formed a single memory, it was the first in a series of horrible tragedies that would end up putting her on the throne. When she was born, no one expected Victoria to grow up a queen. Her father was the king's 4th child, and she was behind a long line of heirs. It took the death of 3 uncles and 5 cousins to make her the rightful heir to the throne of England. John Conroy, her mother's secretary, was determined, to make it happen. While she was still 3rd in line for the throne, he started an active propaganda battle to turn Victoria into a queen. He lobbied Parliament to refer to Victoria as the heir presumptive, trying to unlock her role into the public's mind before she could be replaced. Conroy's propaganda campaign turned the family against each other. Her uncle, King William IV, tried to get custody of Victoria so that he could control the heir to the throne. Conroy, in retaliation, ran campaigns against the king, calling him a degenerate who taunted his court with his retardful children. Victoria was only a child, with no idea why she was so important, but by the time she was 5, her family was at each other's throats, fighting for her. Number 9. Her mother couldn't even handle her. Victoria was a very stubborn child. She fought every order her mother gave her. Her mother nicknamed her Pocket Hercules for her strong will. It was a cute name for a child, but not one that came from affection. Excuse me about that. Instead, it came from the vicious struggles in an unhappy home. Today, the little mouse was so unmanageable that I nearly cried, her mother wrote in her diary. In Victoria's early years, her mother's diary was filled with these desperate cries for help against the tyranny of her toddler. Victoria's very first memory was of fighting with her mother. She got in trouble, and her mother would have threatened that her uncle would punish her if she cried. Ever defiant, Victoria spent the next week screaming as loud as she could every time her uncle walked by. Number 8. She wasn't allowed to play with any other children. Unable to handle her and afraid of the king's influence, her mother gave near complete control to John Conroy. At his suggestion, Victoria, from the age of 5, was put into a program he called the Kensington System that locked her away from everybody but him. Victoria was put under constant observation. Every single thing she did was reported to Conroy, and their caretakers were under strict orders to keep outside influences away from the princess. Other than her siblings and Conroy's daughter, she was not allowed to play with any other children, nor she could be left to herself for much as a second. At night, a governess had to stay awake and watch her while she slept. Conroy bragged about a system, showed it off as the proper way to ensure a good moral child. Victoria herself, though, hated it. She was horribly unhappy throughout her entire childhood. For her whole life, she would never hate anyone as much as she hated John Conroy. Number 7. John Conroy may have been her father. For all she hated him, Victoria may have had more of Conroy in her than she realized. Viral life rumors astounded that her father wasn't really Prince Edward. Many believed that her mother had an affair with the advisor she struck to so closely, and that Victoria was the retarded daughter of John Conroy. Apparently, that's what they said here. The Duke of Wellington claimed that Queen Victoria had all but admitted to it. He alleged that Victoria told him she caught her mother and Conroy engaged in some familiarities. Even if he wasn't her father, then her mother's relationship with him was more than just professional. Some modern historians had taken these rumors for truth. Victoria, they point out, carried hemophilia B, a condition that's usually passed on through genetics. She was the first in her family to carry the disease, and she passed it on to her children. It's by no means definite proof. Still, Victoria would have heard the rumors. In the back of her mind, she would have struggled with the fear that her worst enemy might be her biological father. Number 6. Her mother tried to steal the throne. Not happy. King William IV did everything in his power to keep Victoria's mother from becoming the queen. If he died while Victoria was still a minor, her mother would take the throne. William IV publicly declared that he would live until Victoria was 18. And he did, out of sheer stubbornness. When it was clear she wouldn't become Queen Regent, Victoria's mother took a more direct approach to seize power. After a long tour, Victoria had developed typhoid fever. For 5 weeks she wasn't able to walk. She laid in bed, her hair falling out in clumps, begging for a doctor. But no matter how much she pleaded, her mother and Conroy wouldn't let anyone bring one in. They took her daughter's decline in health as an opportunity. While her daughter suffered, she and Conroy tried to pressure her into signing papers, making Conroy her advisor and treasury, which would give Conroy power over all of her affairs. They forced it on her as hard as they could. Conroy even threatened to lock her up and starve her if she didn't sign. Finally, Victoria's governess, Louise Lehane, couldn't take it anymore. She called a doctor in secret and got Victoria help. Victoria nearly died, but she didn't sign the papers. I resisted, she wrote in her diary, in spite of my illness and the harshness. Number 5. She didn't experience happiness until she was the queen. Back in 1837. Becoming queen was Victoria's first taste of freedom. She called it the first breath of freedom, the pleasantest summer I've ever passed in my life. Looking back on her life at home in contrast to a new life of freedom, she wrote, I never was happy until I was 18. Victoria was still a girl when she took the throne. During her coronation, her Navai played out in some charming ways. Lord Royal, a man who was nearly 90 years old, tripped on his way up the stairs. Victoria instinctively stood up to help him up. She was stopped, though, and told it was a royal behavior. May I not get up and meet him? Victoria protested. She rose from her throne and walked to aged man to save him from exerting himself too far. The crowd was impressed. Though the small act, she won the hearts of her people. The coronation was experience of a lifetime. She wrote in her diary, I shall ever remember this day as the proudest of my life. As soon as it was done, though, she rushed home. Her dog Dash had not yet had his daily bath. In her first act as queen, she scrubbed the pup clean in the tub. Number 4. She kicks John Conroy out. One of Victoria's first orders as queen was for John Conroy to leave the family. He had ruined her childhood. He would not run for reign. Conroy, knowing he had failed to become her advisor, was still fighting for power. He demanded a pension of £3,000 a year and a seat on the Poivroy Council. To avoid controversy, the Queen let him have most of what he was asked for. But she made him leave her and her family alone. In his place, she offered Louise Lehane, pictured above, found in Listverse, obviously. So you shouldn't be worried about the picture at all, because I'm telling you all the info, and you are listening. A place as her lady attendant. The governess, who had saved her life, was rewarded for her devotion with a place chose the queen. Lezen, though, refused. My dear Lezen will always be with me as my friend, Victoria wrote. But I'll take no situation with me. And I think she is right. Well, really. Instead, Victoria would rule on her own, without the influence of Conroy or her mother. After meeting with the Prime Minister for the first time as Queen, she wrote proudly in her diary, that she had gone quite alone, as shall always do all my ministers. Number 3, she married her cousin to get rid of her mother. So, in the first days of her reign, Victoria's mother lived in the palace with her. By law, she was required to live with her mother until she was married. Her mother knew, though, that her days were numbered. Fearing the future, she told her daughter the queen should forgive what displeased the princess. Victoria would not forgive. She got married a little more than 6 months after her coronation. She wasn't even willing to wait for the man to make the move. Victoria proposed to him. Her mother was kicked out of the castle and sent out to town. She married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Belgium. It served a purpose, but she truly was in awesome love. Albert, she wrote, gave her feelings of heavenly love, happiness I never could hope to have felt before. On the wedding night, the newlyweds made love until dawn, with the mother and Conrad of her life. Victoria was, for the first time, truly happy. She called the night blessed beyond belief, writing, "Oh, was ever woman so blessed I am?" Number 2. Her husband died young. Prince Albert was only 42 years old when he died of typhoid fever. He and Victoria had been married for 21 years, happy. Her happiness died with him. For the next 2 years, she wouldn't make a single public appearance. This day last year found us so perfectly happy. Victoria wrote in her diary, when after months of silence, she found the strength to put pen to paper. With what a heavy, broken heart I enter on a new year without him. Well, she mourned him for the rest of her days. For the next 40 years, she would wear nothing but black. The servants were required to keep his private rooms just as he had kept him in his life. By her order, every morning, servants brought hot water for a shade to his empty room. Well, in an echo of what her mother had done to her, Victoria blamed her eldest son for Albert's death. From that day on, she treated him with revulsion, writing, "I never can or shall look at him without a shudder." Nice. I guess this is starting to get dramatic now, guys. Alright, and we finally go on to number 1 with her mother died exactly the same year. I'm not sure, it was either 1858 or 1859. Whenever Prince Albert died. I'm gonna have to look that up. But I know it's around those 2 dates. Just remember that. But Victoria barely... Anyway, I should say, actually, number 1. Let's go on to the number 1, right? Sorry about that. Victoria barely spoke to her mother after she became queen. When she had children, she allowed to visit her home, but they would never share the warm relationship of a mother and her child. Then in 1859, her mother became deathly ill. It affected Victoria more than she expected. I hardly myself knew how I loved her, Victoria wrote, till I saw looming in the distance excuse me, the fearful possibility of what I would not mention. Her battle recovered, but she would end up getting sick again. She struggled with her health for years. Her battle ended, though, in 1861. Victoria's mother died on the same year as his husband, or her husband. My childhood all seems to be crowded to me. Victoria wrote on the day of her mother's death. There was more truth in it than she ever realized. She would visit her mother's home shortly after, and there would be pieces of childhood before her. And then, never until then, Victoria wrote in her diary every night. Did I know she loved me? But man, that's pretty depressing, alright? If you think about a little bit of this stuff is depressing. Anyway, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and support me on Patreon, alright? Anyway, see you guys next time in another